Welcome back to the Healthy Skin Coach Show. I'm your host, Takashi, helping you get clear skin and preaching to the world why food is the ultimate medicine. Today, I have a really special guest, and I'm really excited. His name is Joe Cohen, and he is the founder and CEO of SelfHacked, SelfDecode and LabTestAnalyzer, and is constantly biohacking his way to immortality. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I have like 6 articles of SelfHacked open at any given time, just learning and studying from the top PhDs and doctors and researchers and scientists all over the world. So I'm a huge fan of your site.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate the kind words.
has the quarantine affected the number of traffic on your website?
That's a good question. Not really, no. In terms of traffic, no, it hasn't affected traffic, the quarantine.
Okay. Yeah, you would think so, because now everyone's all of a sudden worried about their health, when I've been preaching every single day that you should optimize your health starting today. I mean, there's no time to waste, you know?
Right. But I guess, yeah, and just we haven't seen any changes though. It's true. It's interesting though.
Yeah, so for the trillions of viewers and listeners out there, could you share your background and how you were inspired to create SelfHacked?
So growing up, I had a number of health issues that I went to doctors and I tried to solve through the conventional and also the alternative medical establishment. And it was clear to me that I wasn't going to get better by following the conventional route. So what I did was I paved my own path, and I started to figure out, I started to learn all about the body and all about natural supplements and different kinds of biohacking and different ways to become healthier. And then I was able to make very significant improvements in my health. I had insomnia, fatigue, brain fog, gut problems, various types of inflammation. It was just a whole list of issues, motivational problems and mood issues. And so it was just a laundry list. And I felt like I needed to really understand the body and, do some experiments myself.
Mm-hmm. And back then, when you were experiencing those symptoms, what kinds of foods were you eating?
I was eating, just a pretty regular, very healthy kind of diet, like no processed foods, because I was already very interested in my health. And so I tried the things that most people would say that, this is what you should do. It just, like I would eat whole wheat bread and olive oil and just like a lot of salads and fruits and nuts and grains, whole grains, beans, just like real food, not like packaged stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but wheat is a inflammatory food for most people, and it actually causes the leakiness of the gut, which it sounds like your symptoms. Based on your symptoms, you were having leaky gut, and the zonulin proteins in wheat actually tears up the intestinal lining. So that could have been one factor.
Yeah, I mean, I do notice that there's, a lot of grains are actually, if not as destructive as wheat, it's for me, it's very similar. Like even just rice, to be honest. If you gave me a blind test and say, here's rice and here's gluten, I'm not sure I would be able to pass that test. But if I were to guess, I think gluten is worse, but I really, I think maybe the gluten stuff maybe lasts a little longer, like the negative effects for me personally. But I noticed from a lot of grains, even rice.
Yeah. When I got my severe eczema flare-up last year, what triggered it was sausage pizza. So red meat, gluten, and dairy, the trifecta of inflammatory foods, just made me flare up. And then what made me worse and worse and worse was tea. So I was drinking green and black tea, thinking the EGCG inside would help reduce inflammation in my body. But for my body, I was actually super sensitive to tea, and drinking 3 to 5 glasses every single day made me worse and worse and worse. And you don't really think about nutrition until a medical condition blindsides you. and then you're hyper focused on optimizing your health through food and diet and lifestyle. So that's how I became obsessed with learning about nutrition and how I can help other people with skin conditions. And then I came across your website, and just so much content on there. And I learned a tremendous amount. So I really appreciate you creating the website.
Yeah, my pleasure. Have you looked at SelfDecode at all?
I haven't.
Okay, yeah. So that's like our main focus right now in terms of content, because SelfHacked is like an encyclopedia of really great content on supplements and different kinds of, health hacks, if you will. What we're doing with SelfDecode is we're making it it's a personalized genetics blog. So imagine a blog, any blog on SelfHacked or somewhere else. We don't just talk about, here's some general information. We relate it. The content changes based on your personal genetics. And it's the first of its kind in the world. And I personally think that what we have now is outdated in terms of, you have content, it's generic content, whereas the future is what we're doing. It's content that changes based on your health data, including genetics. And so that's what I'm most excited about going forward, actually.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds amazing. I got to check it out. Right now, I've been really researching inflammatory biomarkers and how that can cause all sorts of medical conditions. And
so you would love the SelfDecode blog, because what we do is we'll pick apart each inflammatory marker and we'll talk about it, and then we tell you if you have a gene that increases the inflammatory marker that we're talking about or not, and we give you customized solutions and summaries in order to customize the article to you and see, how do you relate to this? Because if it's something that it's not affecting you, even if it's interesting or whatever, you could just be interested in it, right? But if it's, you want to know what are the inflammatory markers that are affecting you actually, and so we can show you, when you look at the blog, you can click on a category, it automatically pulls up all the genes that are have a lot of risk variance in there and are increasing your risk for whatever category we're talking about. And so skin would be an example, right? There's a bunch of genes, as you know, that are involved in various types of skin conditions. And some of the genes, you could take any condition, let's say eczema, there will be a number of genes involved, maybe 30 or whatever it is. Out of those 30, you might have 10 of them that are actually particularly weak for you, that are causing problems. So then you can narrow it down, say, okay, I'm going to look at these 10 and see, and even from those 10, you can narrow it down to like 5, really get into the weeds in those 5, and then get personalized recommendations. And if it's something that we have a report on, you could download the report also to get a prioritized list of recommendations from all the content that we have. So, for example, if it's inflammation, we have a report on that, mood, cognitive function, longevity, and we have one on COVID-19 now. So all of the great stuff that people are interested in, sleep, we make a report on it, and that prioritizes the recommendations, and everything, of course, is science-backed as well.
Got it. I'll definitely check it out. And to the trillions of listeners out there, go check it out. What's the website? SelfDecode?
SelfDecode.com.
Boom. Got it.
And if you want to, there's a video on the homepage showing what the blog is about. We have a bunch of features. There's reports, there's a blog. It's kind of like multiple sites in one, right? There's you could also just type something in and you could get a list of genes or SNPs related to it. We're going to be doing lab tests there as well. It's really like a multi-platform. It's like one big platform with multiple sites on it. And, through one subscription, you get everything included.
Got it. Just today, I was reading up on leukotrienes, and the author is Carlos Tello, is a PhD and MS from the Universidad de Sevilla, and I'm a big fan of his work, and would love to have him on the show as well. Yeah, so in my program, a lot of my clients have psoriasis and eczema and acne, and their diet is just super inflammatory. So I identify the foods that increase leukotrienes and prostaglandins, and then I give them a nutritional plan that helps reduce those inflammatory biomarkers, which can not only clear up the skin but also reduce your risk for heart disease and cancers and Alzheimer's and all these medical conditions, and essentially help you extend your lifespan. So that's what I've been focused on.
Nice.
Yeah. Why do you think nutrition isn't emphasized in school and like in med school?
Med school has a different model. Med school is about treating diseases, and med school is also about, it's very science-based as well. And unfortunately, a lot of nutrition doesn't have as good of science as some of the drugs, because a drug company has to spend billions of dollars to get a drug, and they make money from it. It's very hard to do very rigorous clinical trials on diets, and it costs a lot of money if it's done right. It really is the government is the one who is paying for these trials, because nobody could profit from it. Let's say if we talk about something like nutrition, there's no real clear answers about what the best diet is, and you would think there should be because of how important it is. And part of the reason is because people do better with different diets. That's why, on SelfDecode, we have, you could look at what diets you would do better in. There's different genes that can make you do better with one diet or another. So there is complexity involved, but if there were proper clinical trials done, we would have a lot more information. And so, in terms of nutrition and diet, there's not really enough information on it. Just to say this is the right way, and this is they're also treating disease, remember. So for example, if you, let's say, do a very large clinical trial on cardiovascular disease and the Mediterranean diet, right? A doctor won't be able to recommend it, for example, if you have diabetes, because there's no evidence for it, right? So you really need to do a clinical trial on every single condition, and it's just outrageously expensive. So and the other thing is that we have a specialized system, right? So the doctors are basically practicing medicine, and medicine is drugs. Someone's already sick, right? Nutrition and diet and lifestyle, that prevents you from getting sick for the most part. I mean, you could reverse certain things, but for the most part, they're preventative. A doctor is when you're already very sick and you've got a really big problem. And so it's just the way the system is built, where, if you have a disease, you go to a doctor. If you don't have a disease, they'll send you home, right? If you're just obese, it's just like, there's nothing to do. It's like, okay, it's not my, I don't know. There's no drug for it. I'm sorry. That's just how medicine is built. And it's upon the individual to be proactive and make sure they don't get a disease, it's to prevent it more, because sometimes you can, in the case of cancer, you can reduce your risk of it, but sometimes when you already have it, it's not so simple to just eat healthy and then get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
So prevention really is very important with a lot of diseases. And especially if you have your genetics, you can tailor your regimen to what is genetically suited for your DNA.
Yeah. It's I just tweeted out, like, your body is like a car. If you have a flat tire, you go get it fixed. But if you're nutritionally deficient, you should go see a nutritionist and get that fixed. But most people are just too lazy or just don't want to optimize their health, which baffles me. But yeah, this is the reality of the world.
Yeah, it's not so easy to practice medicine also by giving. It requires something else. It requires a lot of motivation as well. Sometimes people know what to do and they're not motivated. I think also the genetic piece motivates people as well. If you see you have a gene for something and it's like, hey, exercise can counteract the negative effect of this gene, then that's a motivating force.
Mm-hmm. You are a very successful entrepreneur. What's been the biggest challenge of your career and the lessons you learned from it?
The biggest challenge of my career has been hiring the right people, because a company is really a collection of people, and the better the people you have, the better your company. You also need a good vision and You could need funding or some other things, but essentially, if you have a great team and you have a good vision, you're working on something that is a good vision, then you should have a successful business. Right now, it's not always easy to. It's not very easy to get a great team. Often they'll be more expensive, and you also have to be a good manager and the CEO and make sure there's good communication and everyone is happy and they're doing a good job and overseeing what they're doing. So, but also it also requires you to be really good, because you're not going to attract the right people if the leader is not good. If the leader is not working hard, they're not going to attract very hardworking people. So one of the reasons why Elon Musk has such successful companies, because he works so hard and he's so smart, and he attracts the best engineers and the most hardworking engineers. And once he has the talent and he has a good vision, if he knows what can be done, then he has, he can build the product, because he has the talent to implement it. He's not building all these things; it would be impossible. He's just overseeing them. Some of the things. So it's really it's really just being a person who people want to work for. And Jeff Bezos is another great example, right? So being someone people want to work for, and it doesn't happen right away. They weren't born and all of a sudden they got the best people. They worked in their life and they started a company from small and they built it a little, and then from there they were able to hire a little bit of better talent, and it takes time to build it out and keep getting better. But that's, I think, the hardest part.
Got it. I'm creating content every single day to help people optimize their health, starting today. And if you ever need an extra Asian guy on your team, I'm right here.
Yeah, I mean, I would look more at your skills and how suited it would be for what we need. But yeah, I mean, what are your skills exactly?
So what I do is break down really complex sciencey ideas and make it easier for everyone to understand.
Okay.
I just made a video on the importance of omega 3s and the 1-to-1 ratio of omega 3s and omega 6s, and then it kind of ties into how omega 6s can increase prostaglandins and leukotrienes in the body, which if you have too much of it, it leads to cancers and heart disease and all these medical.
That's a good skill to have. Maybe we'll talk. We'll talk later.
Sounds good. What's your favorite biohacks right now?
That's a good question. So I think before I would answer that, I think it's very important to know what topic people want to improve in, right? Just doing something could have one effect that's good and another effect that's either neutral or not so good. So it's all about what is your main focus. I like things that make my work run better, my mood be better, and my motivation, things like that. And so what I do is I look at my genetics, like in terms of like what are the genes are causing mood issues, or what genes are causing problems with cognitive function, inflammation, things like that. So it's very personalized for me. In, let's say, Corona time, if I'm trying to build my immune system, there's some, I notice my mood gets worse. So that's a trade-off for me, right? So it's like, what are your biohacks? It's like, well, what am I doing? If I'm trying to combat Corona, it's a different regimen than if I'm trying to boost my mood or cognitive function or something like that. I was doing a Corona regimen for a bit. I just eased off of it a bit because now I'm prioritizing a few other things. I'm in lockdown anyway. Right now, I'm doing lithium orotate, 5-HTP, pregnenolone, and PQQ. That's and some resistant starch and maybe some butyrate. That's pretty much it.
And what's your current diet like in order to optimize your immune system?
For me personally, I have certain genes that cause me to be sensitive to various components of food, and I have some inflammatory genes. And I do well with a diet that's low in grains and beans and nuts, but definitely excluding grains and beans, and then low in some other plant-based foods like nuts and seeds, but not I do eat some of them.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I don't eat dairy either.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't eat dairy, sugar, wheat, red meat. Yeah, my body is super sensitive, and after taking a sensitivity test, I know exactly which foods to avoid. And it's actually very common. These are very common inflammatory foods that honestly everyone should be avoiding in order to really optimize their health.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on using psychedelics to treat depression?
So I think psychedelics are, bombshell of a topic. I do think that it's, it is something that you would need good guidance for if somebody, I mean, I can't recommend, I could tell you for myself, I think it can be a very useful tool, if you will, right? But it needs to be used the right way. And I don't think a lot of people are using it the right way. If you're using it like a party drug, then that's the wrong way. I think a lot of people also can get anxiety from it because it's very strong. You have to make sure you're in the right place, the right setting, and there's you're the right person is guiding you. And I think you need to make sure that your stuff is clean, and there's a lot of things you need to make sure. But overall, I think it has a lot of potential for depression and things like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I share this story a lot, but my friend suffered from severe ulcerative colitis, and he really only had two options, either to surgically remove his colon or find an alternative solution. And he was able to find a doctor who said he had too much cortisol built up in the body, causing chronic inflammation. And he was able to get 5-MeO DMT, which is a very powerful psychedelic that, when used therapeutically, helped him reduce that inflammation, and he was able to relieve the symptoms completely. So,
Yeah, it can reduce inflammation. That's number one, and it can, improve mood and well-being, and that can reduce stress, which has a big impact on gut function and gut inflammation.
mhm, so he goes around preaching the therapeutic uses of psychedelics. And like when I was suffering from severe eczema, I tried everything. I mean, DMT, acid, shrooms, just to reduce the inflammation that's being built up from food. And until I got my sensitivity test back, it didn't like really occur to me that tea was actually making me worse and worse and worse. So
Yeah,
yeah, and
it could be, right, if you're sensitive to tea
yeah,
or the caffeine in there.
yeah, and most people, when they start seeing symptoms in the skin, they might be eating a healthy diet, but there's certainly foods in that healthy diet that can be inflammatory to their body. So I help my clients
Right.
identify those triggers. What's been some of your most memorable client stories?
I'd say, one of the biggest stories definitely has to do with a girl I was dating, and she had very serious mood issues, and that was obviously causing a very big strain on the relationship. We looked at her mood report, and it said to do a few things, and she did them, and her mood changed overnight. So that was something that you could say she was my client, but I mean, the fact that I was able to see the change and see it so fast with my own eyes, that was a very significant. I'd say that was a very significant story, because you don't really see that if you're just working with a client.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. Are you familiar with the Wim Hof method?
I am.
And do you have any thoughts?
I think it's good. I think breathing techniques are good. That's a good breathing technique, and I think, yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah, yeah, I do breathing every day and cold showers every day, and I'm huge into longevity. So activating those hormetic responses of in my body to help me live longer and activate those anti-aging processes is very important to me. All right, this has been awesome. Where can people find you, Joe?
So they can find me. The main project that I'm working on is SelfDecode right now, and I see that as the most potential to, help people, because it personalizes the information for the individual and allows them more insights than generic blogs like SelfHacked, even, right? But SelfHacked is a great encyclopedia of information on supplements, but I think the future is self-decode, and the personalized blog, the reports, and different features that are coming out.
Definitely, definitely. To the trillions of listeners and viewers, make sure you check out SelfDecode and SelfHacked and go like all his social media profiles. All right. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining the podcast. And as always, Taco is out.